Welcome to this presentation on the Color Contrast Analyzer for Google Chrome. My name is Greg Krause, University IT Accessibility Coordinator at NC State University. So first off, if you just want to know where to get it, you can go to the link go.ncsu.edu/color-contrast-chrome. The link is also provided in the description below. You can also go to the Chrome store and search for Color Contrast Analyzer. So why use this tool when there's a lot of good color contrast checkers out there already? One of the things this tool does is allow you to evaluate text that other tools are unable to evaluate. For instance, if you have text on top of a background image, or if text is over top of a color gradient, or if the text is actually rendered as an image like a JPEG or a PNG file. This tool is able to easily show you where those contrast problems are. Another reason you might want to use this tool is just to get a visual overview of where your website contrast problems are. One thing to note about this tool is you must be able to determine the correct size to evaluate for. Other contrast tools are able to determine what size text you're analyzing and thus set the right contrast levels for you, but the way this tool evaluates your page, you have to be able to determine which level you should be evaluating for. We'll look at that issue in a little bit. So first, let's talk about the WCAG color contrast rules and what those rules apply to and what they don't apply to. First, the WCAG rules only apply to text and images of text, and they only apply to text and images of text. Additionally, they do not apply to any text which is part of an inactive user element, or text that is just purely decorative, or if text is part of your logo or your brand, or if there's text that's in a picture that might be incidental, like text that happens to be in a background of a picture that's not the main point of the picture. What about non-text items? What about other UI elements like buttons and important borders around other objects? Do any of the WCAG color contrast rules apply to things like that? It doesn't mean you can't apply color contrast principles to those types of items. However, the WCAG 2 specification doesn't specify what is and what is not enough contrast between these types of items. The WCAG 2 specification only deals with text. So you could use a tool like this to help determine, at least to a degree, what type of contrast exists between these non-textual items. But again, the results this tool gives you should not be taken as the definitive statement of these two items have enough contrast or not. When you're dealing with non-textual items, there simply isn't a standard out there that defines what is and what is not enough contrast. So how is color contrast determined? Well, basically there's a formula that takes the text and it takes the foreground color of the text and the background color of the text, and it uses the RGB values, or the red, green, and blue values of those two colors, and it computes a ratio to determine what is the contrast level between those two colors. Now, for those ratios, there's different levels of conformance according to the WCAG 2 spec. First, there's a specification for whether it meets AA or AAA conformance. Basically, AAA conformance is going to require a higher contrast ratio than a AA conformance. Most people are going to be interested in the AA conformance because most likely that is what the new Section 508 requirements are going to require. Second, the size and the weight of the font will also help determine what ratio you need to have between your two colors. So for smaller and lighter weight text, it's going to require a higher contrast than, say, larger text. And the WCAG 2 spec defines larger text as being text that is either 18 points or higher with a non-bold font, or 14 points or higher with a bold font. So to turn that into more web-friendly terminology, that means large fonts are either a non-bold font of size 1.5 ems or 150%, or a bold font of 1.2 ems or 120%. So what does this tool do? This tool takes a web page and it analyzes it pixel by pixel. And then it will draw lines wherever the contrast between two pixels is great enough to meet the given conformance level. It then takes those lines and overlays them on top of the rendered web page. If the text in the background has outlines around it, that means it has enough contrast. In other words, if the text doesn't have an outline, or if the text in the background is obscured by the overlay, then there isn't enough contrast. Two things to keep in mind. Once the outlines are put around the text might not actually be readable in the overlay because the outlines might make it too difficult to read. Second, if an item is mostly outlined, it probably passes too. Sometimes when colors blend too gradually from the foreground to the background, it can cause this effect. There are a couple of options you can choose when doing your analysis. First, you can choose which WCAG 2 conformance level you want to use. Do you want to use AA or AAA? Additionally, you can choose whether you want to use the small text or the medium bold large text color ratios. Second, you can choose what size pixel radius you want to analyze. This can be really useful when text has a lot of anti-aliasing or blending from the foreground to the background color. Using a larger pixel radius helps deal with the gradual blending from a foreground to a background color. Just keep in mind, as you increase the pixel radius size, the time to analyze the image will significantly increase. So what all can you test with this tool? You have three options. First, you can choose just to analyze the entire visible contents of the tab. Second, you can use your mouse to select a portion of the web page just to analyze that one section. And third, you can choose to analyze the entire web page. If you choose this option, the tool will scroll your page to make sure to capture all the elements on your page. Just a note, sometimes you might need to refresh the page for the tool to work properly. So let's go see this tool in action. So here I have a sample web page where I want to test some of the elements for color contrast accessibility. To do that, I'm going to come over to the tool, select Capture Page Region, and use my mouse and select the area of the page I want to analyze. Choose OK. Once it's done, it's going to show me an outline of all the items on the page that have enough contrast to meet the given conformance level. In this case, I had chosen level AA conformance for small non-bold text. And you can see the menus on this page cannot be seen through the mask. And you can toggle the mask on and off to see what items appear and disappear as you turn it on and off. And that will show you what items don't have enough contrast for the given conformance level. Here's another page, and this one demonstrates a tricky problem to figure out with color contrast. In this case, I've got text over top of a background image. So the background color is constantly changing, so how do I know if there's enough contrast throughout all of the text? To analyze it, I'm going to come click on the tool and select Capture Page Region, then select the text and choose OK. And once the analysis is done, we can see in the text that it starts to disappear right here with the outlines. So if I hide the mask, we can see that's right where that white text is over probably the lightest part of the background. Now to accurately analyze this text here, this really isn't small text here, this is medium text or large text. So I can change my conformance level to AA, medium bold or large text, and I can rescan it. And I can see now it looks much clearer with the outlines because I'm using a more accurate measure for that size text. Coming back to this page, I want to show you one example of when it's useful sometimes to use a larger pixel radius for your analysis. So I'm going to choose the tool and choose Capture Page Region. This time I'm going to grab the text where it says NC State University. So this text within an image is technically part of our brand, so the WCAG 2 color contrast rules don't actually apply to it, but it very nicely displays a principle I'd like to show you. Now when I first analyze this, you'll notice there's several parts of the text that the border does not show up around, implying that there might not be enough color contrast. But right now my pixel radius is just set to 1. If I increase that to analyze 2 pixels around each of the other pixels and rescan it, you'll notice the outlines now show up on all the parts of the image. The reason that is because this particular text has some anti-aliasing or blending with the background, so it's not such a stark difference between the foreground and background. If you go look at the original page and zoom in very close to the text, you'll actually see this. I'm going to use this tool that lets me zoom in to see exactly what's happening pixel by pixel with something. And if you look really closely as we go from the white to the red there's a line of kind of a half red, half white, almost a pinkish color. And when you only use an analysis of 1 pixel, it's actually testing the difference between that white and that pink, and then that pink and that red, and neither of those steps provides enough contrast between them. But when we expand the pixel radius analysis, it'll actually look at this red here and analyze it 2 pixels away with the white, and that's where it shows you that there is now enough contrast between those two colors.